Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to do a video talking about Bitcoin, and specifically will the coming economic crisis that I'm foreseeing in the US economy and thereby the global economy hurt Bitcoin or help Bitcoin? And so this is prompted by some prominent YouTubers that I've seen online lately talking about how the case for crypto in an economic downturn is poor, and they would argue. Alessio Rastani is one of them, one of the guys. He's got like 160,000 followers, and he's a smart guy. He knows a lot about technical analysis, and when he calls things, I listen. Having said that, it seems clear to me that his opinion is misguided in this case. And I'd like to explain why. He's of the opinion that Bitcoin will suffer during an economic downturn or recession, because people will. His main contention seems to be that people will sell their Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in order to pay their bills. And I would argue that is, that's going to be that's going to be one element of what occurs with some cryptocurrency holders. It's not going to be the case for all. And there will be buyers in even the worst downturn. And so the macro issue is, the micro issue is, will there be sellers? Yes, of course there will be. People who have to liquidate because they can't live if they don't. But the macro issue, the bigger concern or factor is this, that there will be very deep pockets that will come into this space during that time. Just as when there is economic downturns in the stock market, major events where collapse occurs, like in 2008, there were winners. Warren Buffett famously, made billions of dollars buying banks in that time because he recognized bailouts would come and that the banks would be saved. This time around, it's not going to be a bailout from the government that's going to save the economy, to restore things. I think we're going to be in for something worse than before. I think the coming event is going to actually be more serious than 2008, in that was a recession that was stopped by, that was a corporate economic collapse, starting with the banks, because they were over leveraged and going further and further out on sort of the limb of risk to increase profitability so that they could thrive in that low interest market. And then many of the risks, as you know, with the housing market were, far worse than they were listed as. And there was, defaults on those mortgages, and those mortgages were packed as derivatives. So you had this toppling effect. It was answered with governmental intervention and the government paying for those, just buying up that essentially buying those dead books and taking them off the bank's hands. That won't happen moving forward because the government can't. They've done it. Now the next economic crisis is going to be more severe because it's not going to be at the corporate level. It's going to be at the governmental level. The U.S. economy the U.S. government literally stands at the precipice of failure, of bankruptcy. And so I think the next event is going to be bigger than the last. And we're going to see in that severity, we're going to see not just a kind of a speculative investing mindset taking place, as we saw in 2008, 2009, 2010, 11 and 12, we saw gold and silver rocket up in price. I would say that was a speculative investment. People weren't fleeing fiat currency. They didn't believe, probably for the most part, they didn't believe that the US dollar was going to die. But I believe in the next event, there will be a possibility, in fact, I think it's probably a probability that the US dollar will literally die because of hyperinflation, because the answer that the government the trick that the government uses to respond to recession and depression is print money, print money, print money. And meanwhile, the federal, while it's technically possible for them to print money infinitely, it's not practically possible, because in practice, what happens is that money comes from the creation of bonds, the sale of bonds, which is future debt, and there's only so many people who want that investment, first of all, and second of all, there's only a certain number of suckers who believe that that money can be paid back in the future, and the truth is that it can't, and we're seeing kind of that collapse and rollover as we speak, with the U.S. debt rising to unprecedented levels, and the Federal Reserve trying to get rid of some of that those bonds, and let them run off. But we saw what happened in November 2018 when the Dow and the S&P collapsed nearly 20%, when just because the Federal Reserve stopped quantitative easing, stopped buying these bonds. And so the next event is going to be governmental. Next crisis is going to be governmental in nature, and literally the American government might fall, at least as we know it. And the US dollar might fall, at least as we know it. And so, all of that said, I do not believe the next economic crisis is going to be one where cryptocurrency suffers, where Bitcoin suffers. I believe that actually we're going to see great gains in that asset because of what we see historically when we look at gold and silver during that time period of the previous economic crisis. Between 2004 and 2012, gold rose 400%, 4 times its value. And in that same span of years, silver rose 6 times its original value. And so, so you have to ask this question, and this is where we'll leave it today. Because, you have to ask this question: what is the value of gold and silver? What gave them 4 times and 6 times gains in that period of economic uncertainty, where in 2007 and in 2008 and 2009, the gross domestic product of America fell. It didn't go up, it fell. And so in that time of crisis, we saw gold and silver thrive. Why? Because they are good money. They have historic relevance, and they've earned a degree of trust globally, internationally, from investors, because they recognize that it always holds value. It's good money because it's divisible and durable and fungible and portable and resistant to counterfeit. And for all those same reasons, and because it's in limited supply, and it's decentralized in that it's not controlled by 1 or 2 actors that hold all the gold and silver. For those same reasons, we can look to Bitcoin in the next coming crisis as a potential for significant gain, because people move into those assets, those limited supply assets, during time of crisis, because they believe they have concerns around the future of the fiat that they typically hold. And so we see this inverse relationship where when the GDP is thriving, when gross domestic product of a country is going up, like the US, the stock market goes up. But there's this inverse relationship. That's a positive correlation, but there's a negative correlation. When the GDP goes down, bullion goes up. And that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting limited supply assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin to go up in the next recession, depression, and even economic collapse. And so I do not agree that that Bitcoin will suffer during a coming recession. In fact, I would go further and say, I think we're not dealing with an issue of recession. I think we're dealing with a Great Depression or an economic collapse that would be global in nature. And so we're talking about not just one country seeking to flee their own fiat, but the international economy seeking to flee fiat itself, because the US dollar backs the global economy. So if it tumbles, as I'm saying it might, then you'll see all of the cards fall. The house of cards collapse. The euro. What are the other major players? The euro, the Canadian dollar. I'm a Canadian citizen. They're too interconnected, and they will all collapse together. And so we won't just have one economy, like the U.S. economy, U.S. citizens seeking to buy a limited supply asset like gold and silver, as we saw in 2008 and 9, we're going to see the international community rushing into that asset class. And we're going to see bottlenecking where silver and gold, physical, real silver and gold, won't be available for all of the people that want it. And that's why cryptocurrency will thrive during that, because the bottleneck that will occur during the rush for bullion will pour over into cryptocurrency. People will be forced to learn complicated things like, what is a private key? How do I store my cryptocurrency? Where do I buy it safely? And so on, in a moment of desperation where they are literally facing 50% inflation in a month, which is hyperinflation. And so, guys, I believe that Bitcoin is poised to benefit from the coming crisis, and I believe a coming crisis is a given. It might be 1 year away, it might be 5 years away, but I think the US economy is in for very bad things, and therefore the global economy too. And in that time, we're going to see another surge in silver and in gold, as we have seen historically, and newly, for the first time ever, we'll see Bitcoin, which is a limited asset, which is divisible, portable, durable, fungible, and resistant to counterfeit. We will see Bitcoin, the new good money, thrive. That's my opinion on the matter, guys. I'd love to see what you think in the comments below. I also wrote an essay on this topic, which kind of expounds on some of the details of my points raised here, and I include some data that I collected online. You can see the charts there. That's at steemit.com. You can find me at infidel1258 on steemit.com. And guys, I post daily content there. If you're interested, join Steem, start earning cryptocurrency for free by liking and subscribing my content, commenting on my content. I will reward you whenever I'm able, just for your comments alone. And thank you so much, guys. Have an awesome day. God bless.